Knitting is a technology in which a flat, broad, or tubular fabric is formed by a series of interconnecting loops. Knit fabrics are generally elastic and conformable, and varied and complex structures can be formed with different patterns. There are two main types of knitting, weft knitting and warp knitting. Weft knitting is formed by a single yarn forming stitches in a horizontal row or course. Warp knitting uses a sheet of parallel vertical yarns or warp ends that form a row or course of stitches simultaneously. Courses are rows of stitches. Courses per inch are the number of rows in 1 inch. Wales are columns of stitches. Wales per inch are the number of columns in 1 inch. Warp knitting can be used to form a flat fabric or a tubular fabric. Sheets of parallel fibers are drawn through guides, which move the yarn around the needles. The pattern determines the movements of the guides in relation to the needles. For warp knitting, parallel ends of yarn are wound around beams. The number of ends depends on the gauge of the machine, which is the needles per inch, as well as the pattern and desired width of the fabric. The beams are loaded onto the knitting machine, and each end is one by one guided through a series of tensioners and threaded through a guide. The pattern can be input into the machine either electronically or with a pattern chain. A pattern chain is essentially a series of connected links, each of which has a different profile that tells the guides how far to move left and right. Once all of this is loaded, the machine is started and the guides move the yarn around the needles to form the fabric. For weft knitting, one or more ends is drawn through a tensioner or multiple tensioners, then drawn through an eyelet on a carrier that moves the yarns as one bundle across the needles, forming stitches as it goes. In the case of circular weft knitting, this carrier goes around in a circle. The fabric or tube is formed and taken up in a tensioner to control the courses per inch. The most common pattern used at the Secant Group for circular weft knitting is the single jersey. This stitch produces a flat, smooth surface and is very elastic, making it ideal for applications that require good stretch and recovery, as well as drapeability. At the Secant Group, we use a wide variety of warp knitting patterns to meet the needs of our customers. Our patterns can be tailored to create a fabric with a specific pore size, pore shape, more or less elasticity in certain directions, drapeability, surface texture, and many other properties. Warp knitting is used in applications where stability and strength is required in addition to elasticity. These applications include hernia mesh, bladder slings, and heart valves. Warp knitting can also be used to form spacer fabrics. These can be used as scaffolds that get seated with cells and grow tissue. Thank you for joining us for Knitting 101.